So, te tiro whakamuri, ko kiri whakaamua. Looking to the past helps us move forward. Through stories and narratives within the dynamic and moving landscape of Aotearoa, like the creation story of Ranganui and Papatuanuku, we can create opportunity to explore and understand how we practice and what contributed to this journey. This theme is focused on shining a light on our collective challenges to identify why we are here and where we are now. What contributed to this journey? And we'll explore how we enhance and practice today in locally, nationally, internationally, and how we respond towards a regenerative future. And our first speaker is Di Lucas. Di recently celebrated her 50th anniversary since graduating from Lincoln University with her graduate diploma in landscape architecture. There were 5 others who celebrated this milestone with her on that day. Celebrated that milestone with her on the 10th of May. This is Graham Dempsey, Terry Emmett, Peter Ruff, Diane Menzies, and Mike Barthelme. This group gathered for lunch in Aotearoa last week to celebrate this incredible milestone. And Di is here today to share her highlights of 50 years in practice, so I welcome Di.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tititia, te maonga whakaruru. Ko matao, te awa whakaora. No taris o. Ke otutahi. Tōku kaika. Ko Di Lucas, tōku koa, he horonui kai whakaharahari au. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Now you can see I'm from Terrace, from Bendigo. My father, who's there in the picture with me on the left, his great-grandmothers came in separate boats from different parts of the UK in 1841 as widows with children. So we're kind of women-led. The son of one marrying the daughter of another. But Bendigo is where I'm from. That high country, those mountain lands, that schist country, the tussock lands. I grew up there and my parents valued nature and the production, the 12,000 merinos. So that was about the land. I just want to mention the strength I get from my mother through design. When they bought the station in 1947, that house on the left was where they lived. And within a few years, Mum got the roof turned around. You see the picture on the right? She got the roof turned around. I said to Mum before she died, Mum, that was interesting. I've never had another job where someone's turned the roof around. Oh, she said, yeah, I knew what I was doing. And she did. It was amazing. But anyway, I got sent off to boarding school and missed all the... I had ducks, chooks, turkey, ponies, all those things that you miss when you're off to boarding school. But then in 1964, the Beatles visited Dunedin. And this is the drawing I did. We went to the airport to meet the Beatles, and this is a drawing I did to send to my parents. So then I did a science degree at Otago, botany, zoology, geology. And then I said to my mum, what am I going to do? I don't want to be in a lab. And Mum said, what about landscape? And I found in the calendar in the library at Otago, they'd not long started a postgrad course at Lincoln. So I wrote to Charlie. He'd said it would be exempt all the sciences and have to go to fine arts school for 2 days a week at Ilam. Woohoo! Fantastic. But then I enrolled, and there, right, the month I start, there's a high country field day at Bendigo with the professors of Lincoln talking, John Hayward, Kevin O'Connor, and all of them talking on Bendigo about sustaining the land. And so it was a good start. And so a couple of years later, we graduated, and there's that photo that's from last Friday, our class getting together. And so Lincoln was a fantastic base. It was a very good postgraduate course, and I went from that to, I was offered work, Ministry Works or Lands and Survey, which do you choose? And I went to Ministry Works for construction experience and worked through much of the country. And it was, especially when I worked in their target, it was very sexist, and they wouldn't call me a landscape architect. And so I applied for a senior landscape architect job in the Waikato, and the boss called me in, Miss Lucas, you're very young and female. You can't possibly have a senior position in this public service. Well, I got it within a couple of months, and Dunedin offered to reclassify me, but anyway, I went to Hamilton. But it was great. You're able to, I worked with the engineers. You know, I reorganised, relocated, where should the highway go, all those things you do. And in those days, there was no public process. I chose the route for State 01, one State 01 route. They had 6 options. I chose, right, with about next week they start building it. You know, there was no frigging around. So it was amazing. But then there was change of government mood and everything, and I resigned. So I worked through to 78, and then in 79 I set up practice to see if from outside government could make a difference. So could we, as a consultant, make a difference from the outside? And so I set up in Geraldine. There were about 3 practices in the country at the time. But so my thing was I set up with that logo, the endless knot, because landscape, we're so lucky, aren't we, as a profession? We're so lucky. We interweave nature and culture, past, present, future. We're so lucky. And so that's what I sought to do. And so got very involved in doing farm planning, and taking lots of workshops for farming people about farm design. I'd get asked to talk for feed farmers and farm forestry and all those sorts of things. And by 1982, they appointed me to a government advisory body on environmental policy for New Zealand. So I had to go from Geraldine to Wellington once a month. Same government still that I'd resigned from, but and give advice. And we made all sorts of changes in statutes, and so it was great. And published a book on tussock glass and management, which was cool. So the 80s were amazing in terms of what was potentially done, but then I got really annoyed. I do get annoyed, grumpy old chook, at the superficiality of landscape assessment. And especially in the north, it was an Auckland thing I thought particularly, and a very narrow, superficial numbers game of and there was no understanding of the nature or culture of place that didn't factor in. And I got infuriated when there was this assessment of photographs, placeless, nameless photos, and people were meant to assess what was the value of a landscape from a photo without a place name or anything, no information. It was terrible. So I it was back to Lincoln, but I'd already done these guides, some people, and that got published right when we had the change of government. 1,000 copies were meant to go to the Forest Service, but unfortunately they ceased to be by the time it came out of the printers, and still a few copies around if you want one. So I got, through my annoyance at superficiality, I went back to Lincoln to do the first Masters in Landscape Architecture. And I first of all researched the limits of visual project analysis. And got an award for that project. And I love the citation for that award. The judges were obviously very nervous about what I was doing. But it's, and I've got it in my bag if anyone wants to see it, because it was fabulous. So it was saying it's what we all think we should do, the profession thinks we should do, but we're not doing it. So then I did a thesis identifying acceptable vegetation change, because I reckoned that there was far more common ground in society than was evident, with all the fighting going on, so like fed farmers versus forest and bird type battles everywhere. But I knew from my work there was heaps of common ground, so that was about exploring common ground. And I did an anonymous survey thing and got like 93% agreement on a whole lot of stuff that you would have thought was very divided. So I thought the common ground is there. And so then I started running charrettes in various parts of New Zealand. We ran charrettes. We did planning processes such as we did in Arrowtown in 1994, where for the weekend, it was a team, I had about 6 of us running the process. All the public were invited. We have about 80 people in the school for the weekend, and together we work out what are the values, the opportunities, the risks and so on in Arrowtown, and together we did a plan that everybody agreed. So we agreed to get buses out of the main street. These dairy buildings with dairy verandas, these blimmin' great buses everywhere. Get buses out and change the building controls to respect the heritage but not try and replicate it. All sorts of stuff like that. It was fantastic. And so we put the plan together in the Arrowtown Hall within a few days, went off to the Queenstown Lakes District Council, presented it. The community filled the gallery at the council chamber, and the council ticked it off. That's it. That's the plan for Arrowtown. All done within a week. And part of it is proving, public stuff doesn't need to be long, arduous, expensive. You can do things quickly, depending on how you do it. So they called me back nearly a decade later, and we redid it and refined and endorsed what had been done. And then other public processes, we did the Evoker. How am I going? Time, I haven't got a clue. That one, MFE selected that this project be the one to be a model for New Zealand. So we did this community-based planning for a stream restoration in Christchurch. And it was good. And, of course, as usual, I consulted with tangata whenua, and we had a whole lot of community process, and it was a much longer process, not like a charrette. It was a much longer one. But we got the Charlie Challenger Award for that one, and it's still being implemented still today. So, and then many other places I did charrettes, such as Te Waikato Pupu Springs, where there was commercial tourism going on, people diving into the springs, and of course the water's so cold, everybody automatically pees, and it's sacred water. It was totally inappropriate activity. So I called a workshop in Tākaka, included the tourism industry and all the community and that. We had, a lot of people. We worked it out over a weekend. There would be no human contact with the water. So all the tourism stuff would have to stop. we all agreed. It was fantastic. And now, so that was back in 1999. Yeah, just last year, it's got a water conservation order actually protecting it. Some things take a while. When I was there in Geraldine, I got called up to Auckland, got a call from New Zealand Steel, we're building a plant in Glenbrook, a factory, we're going to make coloured steel. Would you come and design the range? So, Geraldine, Auckland for the day. They went in the room, all blokes of course, and they had 200 colour samples around the room. Right, we want to manufacture 6. Which 6? So I go around and got 4, and I said, no, you haven't got, you need 2 dark tones, 2 mid tones, 2 light tones. You've got to look okay, town, country, North Cape to Bluff, not look wrong anywhere, but have shelf appeal. You ain't got 2 of them, you know. So I looked up my British Standard, found, they said, okay, right. They pulled out a bottle of whiskey and said, right, now name them. Not quite current protocol, I don't think, but so I had a whiskey and named them right there and then. Iron sand, it was all out of spur of the moment stuff. And I thought, they're taking black sand, iron sand, they're firing it with coal, with lignite. There's a karaka forest, there's scoria of Auckland, and then the tussock and lichen, the 2 light tones. So yeah. And a few weeks later, the manager and marketing manager of New Zealand Steel came to Geraldine to get me to sign off that they had all 6 right. They quite thought that was quite fun to have to go to Geraldine. So I've done lots of colour stuff all over the place over the decades, and got called to Auckland in 2012 to be given a lifetime achievement. Haven't stopped, but what's that? It's a few years ago. But anyway, it's been lovely because colour is important in the landscape. And people might know about this. Back in the 80s, a kaumātua told me that there were different harakiki flower colours on every mountain range in the country. So I had to give a talk at Te Papa, I don't know, about 2016 or something. And it was forest and bird. And I thought, oh gosh, they got 55 branches around the country. So I got them, asked if, and my talk was about dry lands, but could you go and take photos in the flowering time of wild, natural harakiki? And we managed to get all of this colour range, and Resine worked with me. And it was fantastic. It showed from sort of the yellows of Hawke's Bay to purples of Stewart Island. It was fantastic. So colour's important. And whilst my dad was completely colourblind, but he could spot a merino at a good kilometre away in the tussock, so good on those subtleties, but wouldn't see a patch of lucerne in a something, because couldn't see green, couldn't see red. One disappointment, it's not a highlight, it's a disappointment that the profession does not yet have a method for addressing colour deficiencies in our practice, because colour is so important, and yet we have so many colour-blind people. And there's quite a lot of landscape architects that are colour deficient. We should have a method. That's just a whinge. So in landscapes like this, the subtleties of those colours, but also the valuing of flat land. And other whinges, I've found a lot of times it's been steep land gets valued, but not flat land. And so trying to get people to value natural flats has been a real challenge. I've been privileged to be sent to IFLA conferences or attend IFLA conferences around the world. I went in 1978 to Salvador de Bahia in Brazil as a New Zealand delegate, 1978. And then I went to Poland in 1986 for Lincoln to present a paper on our pastoral landscapes. And then somewhere else, in Taiwan, when I was president of the NZILA, and that was fantastic. But I've also been privileged to enjoy and contribute in China, in Wuhan for the mayor, in Japan, several places, and also in Boston. And Tauranga City Council rang me, said, we've offered a paper in Boston to a conference, and we called it Distant, Distinct Gondwana, and they're really keen. Di, could you do it? We're wondering who could do it. So, would you go to Boston and do it? And I said, yeah, can I take my partner, Paul? Yeah. Oh, sure, yeah. So we went to Boston, and I made the swatch. That photo at the top there is from the swatch. I did it chopped into 45 bits, and it's all references Gondwana thing. So Gondwana I was thrilled with the President's address this morning, and we need to understand our origins and we need to work forward. So thinking about where we came from and moving forward is so important. So in Christchurch, because in Canterbury we have an incredible Gondwanic flora in the fossils of Canterbury, we have Liriodendron and ginkgo that people might not realise. So I've been lucky to be invited to see these fossils. And so it's been good to encourage people, because our current flora doesn't have tall deciduous trees, and often we need them in street spaces. And so perhaps referencing Gondwana, we can introduce such trees. It's been good in recognising and celebrating the nature of the place too, from the more recent history. And when Neil Dawson was called to design this Millennium sculpture in 2000, it's about celebrating the artesian waters. We've got artesian lands in the city, and this is a sculpture for Cathedral Square, and he asked me to make a dossier of the species that would have grown there. And so I put together a dossier of 53 plants, I think, that would have grown naturally in Cathedral Square. He selected the ones he wanted to use and sent me off to bring him fresh samples to use for the design of the sculpture. And that survived the earthquakes. It's been really nice that the chalice stands there still. But the earthquake's been a really, really important part of my last decades. I've been 33 years based in Christchurch now, and the earthquake's really, really important. What was fascinating was the unification of the community, and so we did lots of stuff in our community. My place was fine, and so we could help a lot of others. We did lots about building affordably on soft ground and using timber to recognise, it's sustainable and it's good on soft ground. And people might know that the pattern of ruptures through the city was about the levees, and so understanding the nature of the land and helping people, helping the public understand the nature of the land was really, really cool, and helped people understand why their house was okay but the neighbours got blitzed, munted. And it's good to be able to map and show and indicate the nature of these. And so our area was badly affected, as I said. We had 18 people killed in our area, and so we celebrated them. We had candlelit levee paths through, and stuff like that. It was cool. It was really important, and I did lots with kids because it was tough for kids. And so, yeah, I'm a baroness, child-free by choice, but I was able to get the classes of kids involved in. I bought a boat and we installed it, made a parklet, and kids wrote stories about it and stood up in this boat in the street and talked about things. It was fantastic. And we did this one at the art gallery, which was, they used layers of liquefaction. We made layered cakes from liquefaction, did all sorts of stuff, and made wooden jewellery to talk about engineered timber. But the thing about importance of lushness, of greenness, I get eternally frustrated at the sort of purple cladding, people putting purple and brown foliage to match the cladding and all that sort of crap. I'm on the urban design panel and I see all these dreadful landscape plans and I go, oh my giddy godmothers, can't we move forward? Oh. So we're always trying to inset emissions, be responsible, try and mitigate climate change and adapt to it and be resilient to it. And wildfire resilience is a major. And I'll see quite a few crap landscape plans that don't have adequate evacuation methods, that have inappropriate plantings because they're high flammability up near houses and so on. So we need to get better at that as a profession. And now to be slightly more positive, for years I've included the marine as landscape. When I did this, I got the guys to dive this one and we drew that transect for the Environment Court. My colleagues were assessing marine landscapes like that picture at the top, just the land that pokes out and the thing. No, I did this. And I get on the stand in the court and the judge said, Miss Lucas, why have you done this? I said, Your Honour, the landscape does not stop at the shore. It does not stop at the surface. The landscape flows throughout. As in the Māori world, the whenua goes beneath the sea. It is all the landscape. And right, so we've had good success since then in that, and recognition that the landscape of the marine. And this one people might know about in the Bay of Plenty. We got outstanding natural features and outstanding natural landscapes on the reefs. All that mapping out on the left there in the north. That is reefs, none of them poke out. And so then, the wee bit of Otaiti, the Astrolabe reef, a wee bit poked out at low tide. But generally, we recognised the marine landscape. And I think that it's really sad that it's been so forgotten. So I'm hoping that there's turning points already happening in the profession for recognising marine, because areas are being blitzed and we can use the RMA. We can use the RMA instead of having trawling coming, removing the snapper and the kinner exploding and destroying the kelp forests. As I said to the judge in that case, Your Honour, the Putakara forest on the slope above is well recognised in all the plans. Significant natural area or something. The kelp forest beneath is completely ignored, and yet it's being blitzed when the trawlers come in and the snapper go and the kelp explode. So we need to be better about that, and some of you are onto that. So also on the land, we've done lots with Wahitonga. I've worked with hapu around the country in recognising the landscape throughout. And look, people know about our land typing that we've been doing for decades, and that's been a real highlight for me, that we started that 30 years ago. We did Canterbury, and now we've got it on a tool online, and we've got the whole country. We added Stewart Island about a month ago. And of course, we've they're doing the local ecosystems. That's been really good, and now getting that digital. That's been wonderful. I don't know what the time is, but so farm planning is important, and I get distressed that there's so little rural landscape management happening with landscape architects. And so, we developed a farm planning tool, which we're in a refining state at the moment, because we need to be addressing insetting of emissions on farmlands, and it can be a marvellous landscape thing. So landscape architects can have a key role in landscape change. So from our 1993 study for Canterbury, when we looked at the factors then, we wrote factors. It was all new. It was the first study, big study under the RMA in the country. But that range of factors is really totally integrated, totally reflected in current best practice in Te Tangi Atu Manu. And so I'm really pleased about that. So what I want to say, of course, is let's not have the bullshit. There's been so much superficiality and nonsense, and instead of people working primarily for the landscape, so often they're just doing what the client asks, and that's not our primary response. Our primary responsibility, of course, is to the landscape. I just threw in a few of the things I've been awarded, so I shouldn't forget to say that a key role I had for 27 years. I chaired a ministerial advisory committee, had 14 ministers, I think. Anyway, we managed to protect 342,000 hectares around the country in permanent protection. And that's, landscape was part of that, analysis. And, various other roles I've had. So all I say is I'm still wrestling with the strands and that endless knot. And but I don't regret for 1 minute taking my mum's advice to be a landscape architect. And it's a wonderful profession, and I can keep on wrestling. Okay.